Let's turn to this story now. With concerns over the divestment and job losses around the Shell company reported to be exiting South Africa, the Liquid Fuel Wholesalers Association says this may be an opportunity for the country to get the industry on the right path after the closure of refineries. Cosatu's Matthew Parks joins us now with his reaction to the story. Matthew, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on. It's not necessarily a divestment out of South Africa. It's a divestment in the downstream operations in South Africa. They're keeping the upstream part of it, saying they are moving out of the non-core retail business. Others are saying since 2011, at least this has been happening, especially on the African continent, in Botswana, in Burkina Faso, in Cote d'Ivoire, in Guinea, in Kenya, and Namibia. South Africa has, up until at least 2022, being spared from this. What could have happened that would have led to now South Africa also being a part of this experience?
Hi, and good evening. Thanks for having us. Look, I think you've summarized it correctly. As part of a global divestment shift by Shell, a major international company, and I think they're beginning to move away from fossil fuels, etc., and they're beginning to reorientate the global strategy. Because you are seeing deep structural shifts in the oil industry across the world. People are moving increasingly from fossil fuels, from combustible engines, so to speak, for cars to electric vehicles. And that's going to gather pace in the next few years, the next 5-10 years in particular. So I think it's part of that global repositioning of Shell that you'll see in other countries. It's not just Shell. You can see some of the Gulf states, for example, the Middle East, are beginning to prepare themselves for life beyond oil. And that's a mature, correct thing to do. I think for us, the concern as South Africans is that we need to manage whatever shifts or transitions or change happens in a way that takes workers on value chains with them, that doesn't see us contributing to any worker losing their job, that minimizes any disruption to the economy, including with regards to fuels, which is a strategic resource that the entire economy depends upon. And I think, as you also mentioned in your introductory comments, we should be smart. The petrol stations won't go away simply because Shell leaves. Somebody will buy them. They'll want to sell them for sure. We need to make sure when a new owner comes into play, that they take those workers at the petrol stations with them. They provide security for the companies who provide support, value chain support, and the workers for Shell, etc. But yes, your questions, your comments are correct, because the petroleum industry, the fuel refining industry, hasn't really transformed much 30 years into democracy. So it is also a chance to say, how can we advance Black economic empowerment? Also, critically, how can we enhance the benefits to workers too? One of the good things that government has done under the current administration led by Minister Ibrahim Patel from Trade Industry is to say, when you have big changes in company ownership, when you have mergers and acquisitions, we need to exploit what the Competition Act provides for, is that a clause called the public interest clause. So when the Competition Commission needs to approve a merger of a company, they need to look at the issue of monopolies, etc. But they also need to take into account, are there any impacts upon job losses? We need to make sure the security for workers is there. We also need to take into account, can we use this opportunity to say, allow the new owners to come and provide shares for workers. Let workers owners share these companies. Yeah. Let them also enjoy the fruits of their labor, and to see how can we uplift and improve the wages, etc. And also, how can we support local industries too? How can we ramp up local procurement? So we need to manage it delicately. The headlines are not always great, but I think if we have a holistic picture, it can be a positive opportunity as well. But we mustn't sleep on the job. We must make sure we protect workers' jobs and interests, and also look at the interests of South Africa as a whole as well.
Talking about the interests of South Africa, so there are two levels to the conversation. The one level is that if South Africa would by now have transformed to a much more robust, cleaner fuels plan, instead of insisting on using petrol and diesel, at least we would have taken advantage even of the now focus of Shell of putting charging stations for electric vehicles. That's one. Two, also if our technology would be at that level in advance, quite at a pace, we would be having electric cars, so we would be able to take advantage of that investment. That's one. But two, the other argument is around the refineries. Without a refinery and the integrated operation, an oil major like Shell really has a little point of wanting to exist in South Africa.
Yeah. Look, I think in the larger point, that is a valid point. I think we've seen, I think, in the past year or two, not the first kind of conversation we've had in this regard about having a domestic oil refinery capacity and ensuring security of supply to our local economy. That's a sensitive and a sore point. So we need to address as a nation, because you can really be exposed badly if you don't have a sufficient spread of interest, so to speak. Maybe perhaps another wonderful opportunities too is in Namibia, our sister nation, just across the border, where there are significant discoveries, most likely of large oil reserves in the ocean. Perhaps the conversation could also be held strategically with Namibia to have a little bit of closer supply of oil to us, and also to ensure we build a domestic refinery capacity too, to make sure it suits the needs of our economy as well, because not all oil can be used interchangeably depending on the grade, etc., and the refinery capacity. But I think also the most important point is around the electric vehicles. I think we have moved far too slowly as a country. Something we've been concerned about as Cosatu, something we've engaged with government and industry around. But I think we're beginning to see some very positive momentum. Government recently unveiled the electric vehicle policy, which industry has been waiting for quite some time to get things moving. In the budget this year, tabled at Parliament by Minister for Finance, they've announced a 150% tax incentive for electric vehicle production locally. And I think we're very fortunate as a country that we have about 8 international car manufacturers having plants in South Africa, in Gauteng, Eastern Cape, and KZN, obviously. But many of them have also indicated a real signal that they're going to move towards electric vehicles soon, whether it's VW or BMW, Mercedes, etc. We need to move with some speed. We need to be saying, how can we utilize existing support we give to the motor manufacturing industry to kind of nudge and to encourage that shift? If we don't do it, it's a danger. We can lose those industries and we can lose those jobs, as we've seen in Australia when they didn't move with speed to protect and to nurture and to invest in the industry. But I think what gives us a bit of hope is that, number one, we have a motor industry master plan, which consists of government led by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, by the motor manufacturing industry, and also the trade unions who operate in that sector. And this kind of close partnership between government, business, and labor has seen, and the support that each other give to each other in different strategic ways, we've managed to increase the production of local vehicles in South Africa for the domestic and for the export markets from a few years ago, about 300,000 vehicles a year, to about 400,000 currently. So that's a 25% increase. That means we're saving thousands of jobs. That's also meaning we're creating the pipeline for additional badly needed jobs. And as a consequence, we saw recently VW announced a 4 billion rand investment in the Kariga plant in what used to be called Uitenhage. I think we've seen the Tshwane Special Auto Economic Zone also establishing factories, which have created about 4,000 jobs for suppliers for Ford as well. So I think we're beginning to see some green shoots, and we've also seen recent announcements by Beijing Auto Works, another Chinese company, and also Tata as well. So I think for us, we had the space, but we need to be smart collectively to exploit it. And really, I think by 2030, we're going to really see the world galloping towards electric vehicles, which is good because we can be less dependent as a country upon oil from the Middle East, and you're always then exposed to the very volatile international oil price, which has a huge impact upon our petrol, upon our food and inflation, etc. It can also help us to exceed our climate change targets and reduce our pollution, because the emissions from cars, I think, contributes, about 25% of our emissions. So it's quite a significant chunk. And you can look at our cities like Cape Town. You can literally see the smog, which is quite devastating for humans. But also we have a wonderful chance to rapidly expand our, not just our motor manufacturing capacity for cars and trucks and so forth, but even for bikes, for motorbikes, for trains, for boats, etc. So I think for us, let's be smart, let's see how we can exploit it, and let's really see how we can really take full advantage of a wonderful opportunity coming down the road for us.
Speaking of a wonderful opportunity, the other side of this is that, yes, the 700 service stations are going to be picked up by somebody, but others are saying it's largely going to be the same players who are already playing in the space where they are okay with importing refined product and just merely transporting it into the filling stations. There will be no significant exchange of economy there, where it actually goes into the hands of the poor and the working class.
No, that's one of the most critical points. we really don't want business as usual. We don't need to see over-concentration of wealth amongst a few. We really should take advantage of these opportunities which don't come often and exploit it fully. So the Competition Act was amended in about 3 years ago, and specifically a public interest clause was inserted there, specifically around these issues, that to really compel the Competition Commission to empower the minister when these kind of approvals are made, because for large mergers and acquisitions, they need to have that approval so that we don't see over-concentration of monopolies, to really say, how do we help transform how to transform economic ownership? How do we move away from wealth being concentrated in the hands of a few, largely white, to much more broader black economic empowerment, to look at women, people from rural areas, people with disabilities, etc. And I think also we've begun to see some really positive work done by government around what's called ESOPs, employee share ownership programs, to see how can empower workers, because I think for us it'll be a tragedy to not exploit this opportunity. Petrol attendants, motor manufacturing workers, workers who work at our refineries, at Caltex, etc., are not paid great wages. Many of them are paid a minimum wage. This is really the chance to supplement the income, but also to say that workers can reap the benefits of their hard work. They should not be confined to poverty, to living in low-income communities for the rest of their life. They really need to be empowered. And again, this is a way to grow the economy. If workers have higher wages, have a better, decent living wage, they invest that money in the local economy. They buy food, they buy clothes, they entertain their family and so forth. And that benefits the broader economy. That helps to support SMEs, helps to grow the economy, to create jobs. So we would hope when this discussion comes to a Competition Commission level in the medium-term future, they would really exploit this opportunity, and they would normally invite interested parties to make a submission, like organized labor, like Cosatu, and we will definitely be raising our voice to say, we need to ensure we save jobs, we create jobs, we support local SMEs, local value chains, local procurement, and also we really look at how we can empower workers and how we can support the transformation of ownership in the economy.
Appreciate your time, Matthew. Thanks for coming on. Cosatu's Matthew Parks there, joining us a reaction to that story of Shell's divestment in the downstream operations in the country.